Today, we will discuss the results of Mars's Mahadasha in Chapter 54 of Parashara Horoshastra. Welcome to Part 4 of our deep dive into this foundational text. In this explainer, we're really going to unpack the dense, highly specific architectural framework of the Mars Dasa cycle. We'll be focusing intensely on the subperiods, or antadashas, of two immensely powerful planetary forces, Rahu and the Sun. We're going to analyze the precise Sanskrit shlokas, decode their literal and philosophical meanings, and, absolutely crucial here, we'll figure out the strict mathematical conditions under which these ancient predictions actually manifest in real life. So here's a quick look at our agenda for today. First, we'll do an overview of the Mars Mahadasha. Second, we'll look at the Rahu Antardasha, covered in verses 9 through 10.5, followed by Rahu's practical significance. Then we dive into the Sun Antardasha from verses 64 through 66 and its practical significance. And finally, we'll wrap up by reviewing the exact dasa calculation methodology.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the Mars Mahadasha Overview.
Now, to really understand these subperiods, we first have to recognize Mars as the primary governor of the Mahadasha. It sets a foundation of raw energy, drive, and honestly, potential volatility. When we jump into Chapter 54, the text assumes we already get that the Mahadasha Lord creates the macro environment for the native. Think of Mars as the commander. It's the planet of exertion, logic, property, and sometimes conflict. So any planet operating as a sublord within this 7-year dasa is forced to filter its results through this intensely heated, action-oriented lens. Within this classic astrological framework, guided by ancient seers like Parashara, the Mahadasha of Mars essentially acts as a burning crucible. The specific results of the Antardasha lords will be forged and tested right there. The 12 signs of the zodiac rotate, but for a solid 7-year period, the fiery, martial energy of Mars dictates the overall tone of the native's life. The sublords we're focusing on today, Rahu and the Sun, are basically just visitors in Mars's domain, and their behavior is heavily modified by this fiery host.
Moving right along to Section 2, the Rahu Antardasha, covering verses 9 through 10.5.
We're turning our attention now to the shadowy catalyst of Rahu entering the fiery domain of Mars. It's this fascinating intersection of orthodox action, represented by Mars, and unorthodox expansion, which is Rahu all over. Astrologically speaking, Rahu doesn't have physical mass. It's a mathematical shadow, a node of the moon. Yet, in the Vimsotari Dasa system, it's treated with the full weight of a planet, known for sudden, explosive results. Looking at the original scriptural text detailing the Antardasha of Rahu in the Dasa of Mars, the Sanskrit verses 9 through 10.5 map out the precise conditions for specific life events. What sage Parashara is doing here is laying down a strict, conditional matrix. The extraordinary results he's about to list, they don't just happen automatically just because you enter this time period. No way. They are entirely dependent on exactly where Rahu is placed within the individual's birth chart.
If we look at the literal translation, it reveals a period capable of immense material and spiritual gain. Parashara specifically states, effects like recognition from government, gain of house, land, etc., happiness from sun, extraordinary profits in business, bathing in holy rivers like Ganges and foreign journeys. Sounds amazing, right? However, the scripture immediately follows this up with a massive caveat. These promises are only activated provided certain, very stringent planetary placements are met. Decoding the fragmentary meanings of these Sanskrit terms reveals that Rahu literally must be anchored in its strongest foundational houses. The text explicitly demands that Rahu be in its Mula Trikona, its root trine, or its sign of Ucha, exaltation, or position in a Kendra, an angular house like the 1st, 4th, 7th, or 10th from the ascendant. Alternatively, it can sit in the 5th, 9th, or 11th house, but in those cases, it absolutely must be associated with benefics. If Rahu lacks this structural dignity, it simply cannot deliver those extraordinary profits in business or the gain of land. It needs the solid architecture of a strong house placement just to ground its otherwise chaotic energy.
All right, Section 3. What does Rahu's influence mean in practical significance today?
We have to translate these ancient promises into the practical reality of a modern chart. You know, when Parashara wrote of bathing in the Ganges or getting recognition from government, he was describing the ultimate symbols of status, purity, and success of his particular era. Let's break this down through a layered analysis. Astrologically, Rahu acts as a giant amplifier. When it associates with Mars, it takes Mars's natural raw ambition and multiplies it tenfold. Philosophically, this period really tests the native's ability to handle sudden expansion. The shadow is directing the fire. Can the individual maintain their ethics and stability when they're suddenly presented with massive growth? Practically speaking, those ancient terms like foreign journeys and gain of land often manifest today as, say, international corporate assignments, navigating global markets, or making major overseas real estate acquisitions. The extraordinary profits translate seamlessly into modern entrepreneurial windfalls.
But we have to understand the dichotomy of Rahu here. While we've just discussed the auspicious placements, if you don't have them, let's say if Rahu is placed in the 8th or 12th house, or completely devoid of benefic aspect, the shadow overtakes the fire. This leads straight to the erratic, destructive, and deeply destabilizing behaviors warned of elsewhere in the text, like loss of wealth, danger from thieves, or physical distress. The dignity of the planet in the chart is literally the toggle switch between these two massive extremes.
Which brings us to Section 4, the Sun Antardasha, found in verses 64 through 66.
We are transitioning now from the shadowy influence of Rahu to the intense, illuminating authority of the Sun's Antardasha within Mars, which shows up a bit later in chapter 54. We're moving from a period of unorthodox, sudden expansion into a period of profound authority, illumination, and raw power. The original Sanskrit text of verses 64 through 66 lays out the exact blueprint for what happens when two inherently hot, authoritative planets align. Mars is the commander-in-chief of the planetary cabinet, and the Sun is the king. So when the Antardasha of the king arrives during the Mahadasha of the commander, what you get is a massive, highly visible concentration of power and execution.
The English translation of these highly auspicious verses shows a period of just tremendous outward success and recognition. Parasharana tells us we can expect effects like acquisition of conveyances, gain of reputation, birth of a son, growth of wealth, amicable atmosphere in the family, sound health, potency, recognition by the king, extraordinary profits in business. Notice the heavy emphasis on reputation and authority here. Unlike Rahu, which often achieves success through cleverness or foreign elements, the Sun achieves success through direct authority, purity of action, and undeniable presence.
However, just like with Rahu, the scripture mathematically balances this extreme light with a note of caution in verse 65. If the Sun is debilitated, or if it's hidden in the 6th, 8th, or 12th houses from the ascendant or the Dasa Lord, this same brilliant alignment yields fevers, dysentery, quarrels, and danger from foes and thieves. Two fiery planets combined without the structural dignity of a good house placement will literally burn up the native's health and resources. The fire basically ceases to be a hearth that warms the home and instead turns into a wildfire that consumes the whole shebang.
So, Section 5. Let's look at the Sun's practical significance.
Let's anchor the fiery rhetoric of these verses into applied significance for today. How do we actually spot this in a modern context? Astrologically, this is the soul, represented by the Sun, aligning perfectly with action, represented by Mars. Philosophically, it's a period of purification by intense fire, burning away the non-essential stuff so the native's true authority can finally shine. Practically speaking, when the action of Mars aligns perfectly with a well-placed Sun, that ancient idea of recognition from the king translates directly to modern executive promotions, securing major government contracts, or stepping into high-level leadership roles. And that acquisition of conveyances mentioned in the text? That often manifests quite literally today as buying luxury vehicles or seeing a major upgrade in one's overall standard of living, reflecting that newly attained status.
And finally, Section 6, Calculations and our summary.
To actually utilize these profound insights from Chapter 54, we have to briefly review the mathematical foundation that dictates exactly when these periods occur. Because without the math, the philosophy just can't be applied. Back in Chapter 51, Parashara outlines a strict proportional mathematics system for working out the exact span of these antardasas within the 120-year Vimsotari framework. You see, astrology here operates not just on symbolism, but on rigorous proportional fractions of a human lifespan. Let's break down the calculation. It's actually pretty straightforward. Step 1. You multiply the dasa years of the Mahadasha Lord, in our case, Mars, which is assigned 7 years, by the years of the Antardasha sublord, let's say the Sun, which is assigned 6 years. So 7 times 6 is 42. Step 2. You divide that product by the total dasa cycle of 120 years. Step 3, you just convert that resulting fraction into precise months and days. By doing this math, we can calculate the exact time frames when the specific scriptural results of Rahu or the Sun will activate. It's a brilliant, highly structured system for timing life events.
So, as we wrap up our analysis of Chapter 54, the ultimate question remains: how will these profound ancient principles manifest within the unique architecture of your own life? We've seen how the shadow of Rahu can bring extraordinary foreign expansion, and how the light of the sun can bring absolute authority, but only, and I mean only, if their dignity supports it. The fiery discipline of Mars forces these planets into action. So I encourage you to take a look at your own alignments. When Mars initiates the action, will your chart provide a sturdy foundation for the king's authority or a safe harbor for the shadow's expansion?